Welcome to Say More, a masks off series about identity, reinvention, and what's real when the roles we play start to feel too small. I'm Brooke Lyons, actress, writer, and host of the We Need to Talk About Substack. In each episode, I sit down with artists, thinkers, healers, and entrepreneurs for unscripted conversations about change, creativity, and the quiet courage it takes to live a life off script. Today, I am joined by Dr. Noelle Santorelli. She's a clinical psychologist who works at the intersection of trauma and relationships. She's trained in family systems, early attachment wounds, all of it. But lately, she's been tracking something that doesn't show up in textbooks. Mean mom culture. What is it? It's the silent punishments, the social freeze-outs, the way certain friendship circles start to feel eerily familiar, kind of like the family dynamics we've spent years trying to outgrow. We get into what is mean mom culture, why does it happen, and how do we all heal from it? This episode felt personal. It's sharp, it's honest, it's wildly validating. For me, yes, and for a lot of the other moms I know. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome, Dr. Noelle Santorelli.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you, and I have a zillion questions. But before we start, I want to share with you how I came to your work.
Perfect.
And it is, it's really funny because I think what you speak to, it feels like a very solo, lonely experience when we experience mean girl culture, toxic mom culture. And so I've personally experienced this phenomenon, and I had 3 parts of my reaction, which I think we all share. Number one, it's the blame and shame where we're like, oh, okay, is it something I did? Is it something my kid did? Is it me, my family? Like, do I deserve this kind of treatment? That's number one. And then number 2 goes to the gaslighting where I'm sort of like, no, did I imagine this? I'm projecting this. This couldn't possibly be what's happening. It's no. Reading into it, making a mountain out of a molehill. And the little sidebar caveat to that is that as an actress, it has been my life's work to study human behavior and to observe body language and dynamics so that I can replicate these things faithfully on screen. And for whatever reason, I played a lot of mean people on TV. Like this is my wheelhouse. And so when I see it replicated in real life, I'm like, I don't think I'm imagining that because I'm literally an expert in that. So I can name it. But then the third piece comes in where we don't want to create what they're creating. So then I think I shoulder this treatment by myself. And I've started to realize other moms in the community shoulder this treatment because I'm like, well, if I confide in someone, if I talk about these people, then how am I better? Yeah, I'm gossiping. I'm doing the exact thing I'm critical of. So with all of that said, I stumble upon your Instagram page and suddenly I land in a place where I feel seen, validated. You name it. It's been truly like a mental health foundation.
I'm so thankful that you found it. I am so glad. I am so glad. And you just described every experience or most women's experiences perfectly. From the way it starts, from how you gaslight yourself into saying wait, what? Am I imagining things? Am I being hypersensitive? You go through all of that. Then you feel isolated and ashamed because you're questioning, is it me? Is it my family? Maybe it's my husband. Like I've pointed blame at everyone in my household as to the why. Then there's the sort of confrontation stage. If you get to that point, we're trying to understand with another person. Then there's the gaslighting. Then there's it's a whole cycle of behaviors. And I love that as an actress, you're saying you're highly perceptive. So you can kind of smell out inauthenticity.
And it's funny because, I think instinctively we all have that ability. Like if we just silence the mind and trust our gut, humans can tell. You can read energy. Babies can read energy. We can all do it. But then we think ourselves out of it. But it's really funny as a performer because like I said, sort of mean girl characters have been in my wheelhouse for so many years. And so when I see it played out, I'm often have to suppress it. It's not that it doesn't hurt, but it's almost like I've got to suppress my laughter because I'm like, you're doing a parody version. Like these behaviors, like, are you doing an SNL skit of like mean this? And then to deny it, I'm just like,
it's mind blowing. It's crazy making. I like to call it crazy making.
Crazy making. Okay. So I just wanted to start by really thanking you for the work that you do and for your platform.
I'm so glad you felt seen. And so many women have come forward saying they feel seen, which is why I've seen such like fast growth, I think, because it's an area where nobody's feeling comfortable, confident, speaking out about it.
Yeah. Which leads me to, how did you in your practice land on this? Like what led you to this work and how did you become an expert in this?
Well, so it's sort of, I kind of think of it as like a butterfly effect in a way. So I'm in private practice. I'm a psychologist. So I have my doctorate in clinical psychology. And so clinical psychology is really the study of mental health and mental health diagnoses. So it's really pathology, right? So it's working with people who aren't necessarily just going through a hard phase in their life, or at least the training was, but it's diagnosing mental illness, right? So at my baseline, I work with mental illness. And within that, I work with trauma specifically. And in terms of trauma, my sort of wheelhouse has always been relational trauma. So it's been early trauma that sort of occurred at the hands or within the realm of relationships. And so you can think of, toxic family dynamics or dysfunctional family dynamics, attachment injuries with parents, sibling rivalry to the extent where it's been traumatic. And so my wheelhouse has been toxic systems or dysfunctional systems, but mostly within a family.
Yeah.
And so that's my wheelhouse. And then in particular, working with borderline or narcissistic parents.
Interesting.
Well, the adult children of borderline or narcissistic parents.
Right.
So I'm going about my life, right? I'm in private practice. And then I fall into this system of what I now call mean girl moms, for lack of a better word. And as I started to heal from it a bit, I started to think, and I had that same experience where I'm like, am I in like a parody? Like, am I on, some sort of like game show where this is
so punked right now? Like, is this real?
Like what? Like, it's so obvious to me. And yet it was like blinders were on everybody else. As I started to heal from that experience and I did remove myself from it, I started to realize that I was living out the exact same psychological pattern that so many of my clients live out within their family system.
Interesting.
So it's the same type of behaviors and system that we see in dysfunctional family systems. I was starting to see it in these friendship circles.
Yes.
So that's how I sort of came to it and started researching, what is this? Why is it happening? And how can we make the parallel between the treatment that we give for family systems? How can I help women that aren't experiencing this in a family, but are experiencing it in a community?
Mm-hmm.
And the it is relational aggression.
Relational aggression. So for those who aren't familiar, what is relational aggression? What is a mean girl mom? What does this look like in a friendship circle or in a school community or whatever?
Yep. School community, neighborhood, churches, workplace, we've heard it all. I focus on the school community or the community with moms and children, because that's where I've seen it be the most insidious. Mm-hmm. And the trickle down effect is so large because it's impacting our kids. So relational aggression is aggression that targets a relationship. So it's aggression that is typically covert. So it is not obvious to most people or to the naked eye, right? So physical aggression is I'm punching, I'm hitting, I'm kicking, or I always joke, I'm shoving you in the locker.
Yep.
Right. It's obvious.
Yep.
There's marks, there's bruises. It's very obvious. That's more likely to be, historically at least, that's in men most often, right? The physical aggression. As women, we are socialized, we're taught to be more gentle, to not express anger as outwardly, as openly. And historically, we were the sort of owners of the relationships within our communities.
Yes.
Right. So we were home, we were sort of making the food, we were caring for the children, and our wheelhouse of what we had to protect were the relationships within the group. The men were out hunting and gathering, right? And so relationships have historically been the women's wheelhouse. And so relational aggression is taking your anger, taking your insecurities, taking your envy, your jealousy, and we'll get into what causes relational aggression, but it's using taking those feelings and using covert behaviors to damage or destroy relationships to get yourself back in a position of control or power, or to maintain it. And the behaviors we see are things like gossip, manipulation, triangulation, backstabbing, passive aggressive comments, gatekeeping information. So I'll leave it at that, but that's an example of what it is.
And my favorite, the silent treatment, which for a moment I was like, maybe this is just people holding boundaries. And then I thought, no, I think it was from your account that I said, this is a form of punishment and manipulation.
Silent treatment, gaslighting, those are all forms of relational aggression. Someone's mad, someone's angry, someone's feeling out of control or insecure, and they will use these methods to more quietly get their point across.
And so I wonder within that, because so not everybody is this way,
no.
Of course. And we've got two sides, right, to what is traditionally, historically a feminine experience. And you have children and people say it takes a village and there's talk of a sisterhood. And that is also very present and true.
Yes.
But the other side of this is what you're talking about. And I wonder, both within the individual psychology, take any one of the people who are acting this way, or within a group. It feels simplistic to say what causes this, and I'm sure there are a number of reasons, but why do people do this? Because again, in terms of being a recipient of this or being an observer of this to others, we go through the gamut where it's sort of like, does this person have inner child wounding? Maybe they're having a hard time in their life. You go through all the things to try to understand. Maybe they never learned conflict resolution. But there's a limit to that empathy when you're sort of like, okay, I haven't observed this since maybe middle school or high school. And you go through your 20s, all good. You go through your 30s, all good. And it's been downright shocking to me in my 40s to observe behaviors that I'm like, whoa. I want to understand you, but have we not done the work to outgrow this? So how the hell does this still exist in people at this age?
Right. And this is what you're saying. It was my exact experience. And then the more I started talking about it openly, the more and more women started sharing on Instagram, but also in my private practice, that they had been fine, right? They had been more or less, most of the women I've talked to have been relatively stable in their friendships and relationships. They've had, some relational aggression here or there that is very common for middle school development, like developmentally.
Yeah.
But nothing to the degree that I've witnessed or people have witnessed in motherhood. It's like cutthroat. It is cutthroat. So couple thoughts here. So obviously everyone's got their own individual pathology or psychopathology that we can't possibly assess everybody's rationale for being this way. So for some people, they may be highly perfectionistic to the point where they need a lot of control exerted on their environment. And having children and being in a large social group takes away a lot of control, which can trigger the perfectionism, which really is based in anxiety, wanting everything to be controlled and managed. So that's one reason we might see it. We might see it because the individual has such deep insecurities that maybe when they were single or at least not having children, they could manage that insecurity to some extent. When we have kids, it's almost like, the saying, you're walking around with your heart on your heart outside your body.
100%.
Right. And you can't control your kids to the extent to which what they like, how they present socially. I mean, we can to some degree, but we're all individual humans. So if you have an insecurity at baseline, having your kid a part of you walking around on the outside world can really trigger that insecurity or make you hyper vigilant to how you're being perceived.
Yeah.
This is my theory, right? So we've got perfectionism and control. We've got deep-seated insecurity. We might also have, like you said, never having learned conflict resolution, or maybe you've learned it at like a very baseline level. But when you add more people into the mix, it gets a little more complicated. And so you revert back to earlier, more sort of fundamental or less evolved strategies of resolution, like relational aggression. So those are some reasons. Or you've got someone who was bullied as a child, and so they're sort of re-experiencing, or they're sort of subconsciously falling into the sort of over hypervigilant, overprotective, I'm going to control this so that doesn't happen in my space. So those are more of like the individualistic reasons. I think on a broader level, I think we are dealing with a large sort of in society, this feeling of scarcity mentality.
Yeah. Like, is this sort of a newer, or not newer, but more emphasized currently in the world?
I think so. I think so. And I think there's so many factors that contribute to it. So obviously social media, everyone's wins are being advertised. Right? Like most people, we're not advertising our losses.
Right.
So we're sort of constantly seeing everybody's wins to an exaggerated extent. Johnny got into college, Melissa got a scholarship, Susie, placed first in her soccer tournament. We're seeing everybody's wins. And so I think it makes us hyper vigilant of what are our wins. And then I think that hyper competitiveness comes out because it feels like we need to compete. And to some extent, I think it feels like there's not enough to go around. So your win or your kid getting into a certain college or getting, an award at school, that's my kid's loss. And so that's going to trigger this sort of evolutionary or biological response to protect my resources. And one of the ways women protect their resources is through the relationships.
Okay.
That was a lot.
It's beautiful. And it makes so much sense on a number of levels, both through the lens of the children and having a scarcity mentality when it comes to opportunities or, who's going to present as, quote, the best, but then also on the individual level, needing to prove or display or show, hey, I'm here with these people, like in the way that teenagers would. No offense to teenagers, but.
Well, and that's appropriate developmentally as a teenager.
Appropriate for that age. Yeah. But it's interesting when someone in their 40s, let's say, perhaps feels perhaps a lack of a sense of self or not confident enough in their sense of self so that they need to then buffer with, I'm going to control this situation. I'm going to give this person the silent treatment. I'm going to be very nice to this person. I'm going to talk about an exclusive gathering in front of all of these people very loudly. Just like the basic rules of kindness and etiquette. And I wanted the contradiction or the hypocrisy that I find so striking about a lot of this is that we as a society have co-opted so much therapy speak. Like, you have the degrees, so you can speak to this, but so many people use all the words, I'm guilty of this. And we thrust this upon what we're expecting of our children, right? So we have children who are 5, 6, 7 years old, and we're sort of like, I'd love for you to demonstrate empathy. This child needs to be better at conflict resolution. Let's work with the kids on conflict resolution. And there's a lot of lip service paid to that. And yet I find that in what you're talking about, there's not a lot of modeling of healthy relational dynamics. And so I'm curious then, so we have this going on with the parents, and I'm curious about the overt ways it's affecting children. And also I always am curious about the covert ways it's affecting children, because if, let's say, a daughter sees a mother giving another mother a silent treatment or ripping her apart or judging her, the daughter is thinking, consciously or subconsciously, oh, okay, so if I have a problem with someone, that's how I approach it.
Yep.
And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So how is it, I guess my question to you is, how does this impact our children? And then sort of like, what on earth are we supposed to do to stop this cycle and give them the community they deserve?
And that's exactly why I in my practice, psychologically speaking, I work with a lot of cycle breakers within families, right? So adult children who experience trauma or dysfunction, from sort of social media, we say those are cycle breakers. They're raising their own kids and they're breaking the cycle of family trauma. That's why I always say, let's break the cycle. Let's break the mean girl cycle, because it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing, right? It's intergenerational and it's passed down. It's passed down through what we see, how we experience other people, what we believe is right or wrong. So yes, the impact on kids. First of all, they may not understand what exactly is happening, but kids can pick up on feelings. Kids can feel it. So they may not understand why their mom is giving another mom the silent treatment, or why suddenly they say, oh, we're not going to have her over at the birthday party. We don't really understand why, but they certainly feel it, has been my experience. And then they trust their parents, or we would like to think that they do. And so then they start to pick up on that mom doesn't like that mom, which might mean mom doesn't like that person's kid.
Yeah.
Which means I probably shouldn't either.
Right.
I don't know why, but I'm trusting that my mom is making a fair assessment of the situation or the environment, so that I'm going to maybe feel a little hesitant or pull away from Johnny myself. Because I'm hearing weird things, or I'm hearing tension in the voices when the moms are talking about Johnny. I don't know what they're saying, but it feels weird. And so then they start to treat Johnny a certain way at school because it's trickling down. And again, they may not know why, but they know the feeling of this isn't good or this person's not good. And then it trickles down. Now, the kid, Johnny, has no idea what's happening because their friendships may not have changed, right? There maybe wasn't an interaction on the playground. Maybe there was no problem on the school bus or in the classroom. And so they have no idea where this is coming from. So then that's particularly hard on someone's self-esteem or understanding of relationships or understanding of cause and effect. Seemingly out of nowhere, they're suddenly villainized.
Yeah.
And so that has a really large impact on someone's self-concept, self-esteem, trust in relationships. So that's one way that it kind of trickles all the way down, or that I've seen it trickle down. And remember, everything's covert. Everything's covert. So you can't, lots of times, there's no identifiable thing that you can go to the school with or even address another parent with. So it's really hard to say, well, at the women's dinner last night, I noticed you really didn't make eye contact with me, but you were really chummy with the lady next to you, because then you feel crazy. You feel like you're being needy or too much or overly sensitive.
Yeah.
And so you're stuck.
Then you're stuck and you feel crazy talking to anybody because you're sort of like, I feel like a ghost, but also maybe I'm just being dramatic. But also, like you said, how is this impacting the community? How is this impacting the children? And again, if somebody has that level of comfort or lack of comfort with conflict resolution, or if not conflict resolution, then just being authentic and sort of straightforward with other people, then I find that they're not particularly well equipped to receive what may be construed as healthy inquiry. If you say, okay, I'm not going to like fight fire with fire, if I'm going to keep my side of the street clean, and then also be really brave and really vulnerable and approach this person and say, hey, I could be reading into this, but I'm feeling something. I just want to know if there's, I have not done that myself. I was TMI. I was about to.
Love TMI.
But TMI. But my therapist was like, no, this is a toxic situation. Like, you have done everything and more that you need to do. So I did not do that myself, but I have had friends who are sort of like, oh, you know what? Let's confront, let's talk it out. And it's not met with open arms. It's met with vitriol and more toxicity. And so,
yeah. And I have a lot of people, obviously on social media, you get a lot of comments from a lot of people, a lot of different opinions. I have a lot of people that are more in the space of not pathology or not pathological systems, right? Who don't have the training in that area. So there's a big difference between healthy friendships and what I'm talking about.
Yes. Right. Because within a healthy friendship,
of course you're going to communicate. I would never suggest to my client, to a friend, walk away, or the let them theory, right? I would never suggest in a healthy friendship or any relationship to just, walk away or let it go. What I am talking about is clearly dysfunctional, clearly toxic situations where confronting a situation can do much more harm than good.
Interesting. So,
in my opinion.
I've observed that anecdotally, and I feel that in my gut, in my own experience. And so, okay, so like, let's paint a picture. We find ourselves in this position. And here's what's interesting. I'll add a little context when it's sort of like inspired by accounts like yours and work like yours. Moms start to talk about it. For example, I was at a breakfast a couple weeks ago with a couple moms from school, and one was hilarious. We had already planned our meeting, you and I, and another mom from school. I've known this woman for a couple years, and finally she was sort of confiding in me something that's been in her experience. And I said, oh, me too. And she grabbed out her phone and she said, wait, I've got to get this account. I need to show you. And it was your account. And I was like, I'm going to speak to Noelle in a few weeks. She's like, what? I'm fangirling out. So,
oh my God.
So beautiful that in these small pockets, people are sort of beginning to talk about it.
Yes. And that's the breaking of the cycle. In my opinion, this is how we break a cycle.
That's what I was going to ask. But here's the curious part. Like, then we are aware of it, right? Like, we know, but then we are still not quite equipped. Put us then, these moms who are aware of each other's experiences. There's a level of trust, a level of like, yeah, we've both been in the same boat. We trust each other. We see each other. Now we're in the presence of, let's say, somebody toxic. And again, still, there's nothing we can do. We're all just sort of standing there. So I guess like what actions, what ways do we set boundaries for ourselves? What ways do we start to like, I don't know if it can be healed, but just move this forward or break the cycle.
So I think there's some lower lifts and some higher lifts, right? So by a lower lift, so let's say, because a lot of us are in situations where we can't just walk away entirely from the systems, right? So sometimes you're in a smaller friend group where you're like, this is just the drama. It's too much. It's toxic. I've tried maybe having a conversation. I've cleaned up my side of the road. I feel like I've acted with emotional integrity. I've been honest. I've been authentic. You've done everything you can. At that point, sometimes you have to walk away. You have to lean into acceptance and remove yourself. Other times you're in a system, or let's say it's your kid's classroom, right? You can't just walk away from, or your neighborhood, right? You can't. And so by lower lift, you have to start getting comfortable with one, recognizing when it's happening for starters. Mm-hmm. Lots of times we're so sort of in the moment that I myself have been guilty of this. I'll get into it. I've gotten into it. I've been in the middle of a gossip fest for sure. And I don't even realize it sometimes. Now I do, but until the next day, I'm like, I feel kind of icky.
Yeah.
I don't feel great. And what I started to realize was that was me masking or putting on a performance in a group to fit in, because we all want to fit in. That's normal, right? We all want to fit in. And when you're bonding over gossip, it feels like you're in the in, right? It's a secret. And women like that. That's one of the sort of pillars of female friendship from a book, Fighting for Our Friendships, is females having secrecy, or it feels like a connection.
I see it with my 5-year-old daughter. Like it feels biological. Like I see it right out of the womb.
Absolutely. And so the first step is recognizing, even if you have inadvertently been a part of this yourself, because many of us have, right? And so not shaming yourself, but recognizing when it's happening, because it can feel really intoxicating when you're in the middle of a group and someone's like, oh my God, let me just tell you, it can feel really just invigorating, or like you're in something. So I'd say one of the first steps is recognizing if you are inadvertently engaging in the behaviors yourself. That's one. And if you are, you need to find small ways, those are the low lifts, to eliminate yourself from engaging. So you might say, if someone says, oh my God, did I tell you about, Susie's thing? You might say, no, I haven't heard, but let's talk about it when Susie's here. Or I haven't heard, but let's save it. I'd rather hear Susie's input on Susie's experience. So you can come up with your own sort of tagline or statements that are not rude, that are not like, get away from me and stop shit talking, but are sort of more polite and sort of setting that boundary of, I want to know, but I'm making an effort myself to not talk about people when they're not here. That's my own commitment for 2025.
Love that.
You can come up with your own sort of gentle and yet firm boundary about how you're not going to engage. Or here's another real life example. Just this week, one of my colleagues actually who follows me and has kids in elementary school, she realized that one person from her daughter's soccer team was not invited to another woman's birthday party. And she was like, oh, this is awful. This is so awkward. Now I have to lie, right? So she got pulled into the, she's like, gosh, I feel so bad. I feel like I have to lie about where I was Saturday afternoon, where I'm going, because this other child wasn't invited. And the mom was talking to her about, hey, what are you doing Saturday? And so she was thinking, she had awareness of the relational aggression. And she's like, what can I do here? And so she felt like for herself, and now this is brave, but she contacted the mom who was hosting the party. And she said, so-and-so wasn't invited. She was asking me about Saturday. And I feel like it's not really right to not include one person.
Yes.
And the mom pushed back and she said, well, where do you draw the line? I had to draw the line somewhere. I can't invite everybody. And my colleague, granted, she's a psychologist, but she said, I think you don't draw the line when it's one person. I think you can draw it somewhere else. And so the mom very begrudgingly invited that one
Wow.
girl. Does the mom feel great about my colleague? Probably not.
Huh?
But that was a risk my friend was willing to take.
And that's exactly it. It's a risk.
It's a risk.
You're not playing along. And then I wonder too, if people listening would say, okay, two things. One, for the child who's having the party or the mom who's hosting the party, what is the lesson then about, like, you don't have to be friends with everybody, but, and you don't have to pretend or be false, but you do have to respect what's the lesson there as far as inviting? And then as a second part to that, for the child who wasn't invited, but then was invited and may not know about that whole backstory, hopefully not, but it's sort of like, yeah, thank God. But it's like, do you want to be invited to places that you're not, quote, wanted? Where is all of that landing?
So there are so many conversations here. So one is, I do always talk to my kids, or when I used to work with kids in therapy or teenagers, I always talk about, you do not want to be seated at tables where they don't want you. Or my favorite is where you're the topic of conversation when you get up. Right? I don't ever want to be at a table where if I get up, I'm the topic of, I don't want to be afraid to go to the bathroom. I don't want to be afraid to say, you guys are still talking. It's 9:00. I'm tired. I want to go home. I want to be at tables where I know I'm safe when I'm there and when I'm not there.
Yes.
Right. And you know it when you are. You know it. You know, if you really trust, if you can really sit with yourself, you know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so I teach my kids that from very early on. It's a painful lesson, but it's a true lesson. And I try to empower them by saying, and you can build your own table, right? So you can build your own. It's painful. It hurts terribly. But you can build your own table, and you're loved here in our home, in our family, or at your sports team, or at your church, or at your temple. So I try to help them diversify where they put their relationships.
Smart. So that it's not all focused
on one. So it might hurt, right?
Fitting in or belonging or validation.
Right. So this girl may be hurt that she wasn't invited to the soccer party, but maybe, hopefully, she's got a strong network of other relationships at school.
That's the take-home lesson, is to diversify your friend groups.
For kids and for women, for adults. And the first part, I think you were asking about the women. So what lesson does that sort of, where do you draw the line, right? Because the reality is you can't be friends with everyone. Right. You shouldn't be expected to. But I think that some of it does come down to basic manners and etiquette at some point.
I say this all the time, and I'm like, am I going to die on this hill like all by myself? I'm sort of like, this is just baseline respect to, like, even if you are not friends with someone, if you do not care for this person, you can look them in the eye and greet them. If you're having a party, you do not invite one person. If you want to only invite half the people, that feels appropriate.
Fine. Right. It is much easier even to have a conversation with kids when you're like, okay, Jimmy was allowed 5 kids. I'm sorry you weren't one of the 5. I know that hurts. I get it. And there are 15 other kids that also weren't invited, right? And so I think some of it comes down to this basic, like, manners and etiquette that, as psychology speak has gotten more popularized, right? Everyone's like, well, that's my boundary, or like, well, I'm drawing the line, or not everybody can be everybody's friend. And it's like, yes, and there are some basic principles that should always be upheld.
All of those things. And I'm just kind of like, that's not what a boundary is. That's not what that looks like. And it's true. Like, it's a pretty rude awakening when you have little, you have little babies and everybody uses the word friend. You're at the grocery store, you post up, hi friend. Yeah. Like, the whole world is a friend. Yes. And then that starts to fade away the minute you enter elementary school and you realize, no, not everybody's your friend. And that's okay. But then we're missing the piece where we're sort of like, and we respect people in our community and beyond. You don't have to be friends.
Exactly. But we do have to show respect. I think we have to show sort of understanding and empathy. And again, we don't have to cross the line and invite, the whole grade, but don't invite the whole class but one person. Don't invite the whole basketball team except for 2 kids. That's it's just not appropriate behavior. So at some point, I think we have to start looking at what is appropriate versus inappropriate behavior. And yes, I'm all for being authentic and being who you are. In fact, that's part of what I talk about, finding your groups where you can be authentic, but authentic doesn't mean blatantly rude.
Right.
Like, okay, I'm being authentic, so I'm not going to talk to Brooke today because I don't like what she did last week.
That's okay. So that's a great example, right? Because that seems absurd and hurtful. And yet if I'm trying to put myself in the other person's shoes, I'm obsessed with this idea of authenticity. And this is why I started the podcast in the first place. It's, as an actress, I think I just got kind of tired of performing, and like, I love performing for my work and having that feel authentic in its own artistic way.
Sure.
But I realized I was performing as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, performing the school mom. I was like, now I've got to be this person and act. And I just got so tired.
Yes.
And so it's exhausting. And so I'm really deeply interested in removing those masks. Like, come as you are welcome here. But then my question to you is, say you are like, I don't like what Brooke did last week, so I strongly want to talk to her today. How do you maintain that authenticity without veering into mean girl mom behavior, without veering into just disrespect or covert casual cruelty?
Right. I think that covert bullying or relational aggression, right, that comes from a place of non-acceptance. So that stems from when we're feeling something usually negative. So it's jealousy, it's envy, it's fear. When you're really being authentic, there comes a degree of acceptance around whatever the situation or the reality is, which doesn't make me want to act out in negative ways. So if I'm accepting that our relationship is no longer good for me or positive for me, and I really have done the work and I really accept that for whatever reason, I'm not going to be internally or externally motivated to run around and be negative about you because I've accepted it. I'm at peace.
Yes.
Right. So if it's fine if I don't like you anymore and you don't like me anymore, that is okay.
It happens.
It happens. What doesn't have to happen is the negative talk, the sort of the smear campaigns, right? That's coming from a place of unhealed. That's coming from a place of non-acceptance.
How do we get to that place of acceptance?
So, in one of the sort of theoretical orientations that I use, we talk about acceptance as just the acknowledgement of the reality that is. You don't have to like it, but you do have to acknowledge that it is what it is. And so that I always like to think of acceptance not as I like this or this feels good to me. It can feel really bad and you can still accept it. So it's not trying to spin something as positive. It's just trying to acknowledge the reality.
I just felt my shoulders drop as you said that, because I think that when we, as people, as vulnerable, imperfect people, are trying to navigate all of this, there is a temptation to do more and say more and be more. And that's exhausting too, once you've really done all that you can do. And the thought of acceptance feels very relaxed, and it's not writing off. It's not saying, oh, screw it, whatever. It's saying this is what is.
Right. This is what is, or at least this is what is for right now.
Yes.
I don't have to like it. In fact, I can despise despise it. But I do have to acknowledge that this is what it is. And at some point, there's not much you can do to change that reality if you won't accept it. And I think, a lot of people, and I go mixed with Mel Robbins' Let Them theory, the biggest part of me really loves it, because what she's really talking about, and she's not saying it in these terms, I don't think, is she's talking about acceptance, right? She's not saying, I've seen all these parodies like, let them steal your social security number. Let them, like, I don't think that's what she's, talking about. I think at the baseline, she's talking about acceptance. We can't control everybody's behavior. We can only control our own and our response. And that's where I think the healing starts. And in this theoretical orientation, we say that pain is a part of life, because it is.
It is. It's a hard thing to teach our kids. It's a hard thing to swallow, but it is.
In Western, more mid to affluent communities, people don't want to accept that sometimes life sucks. And there's no money, there's no connections, there's no anything that we can throw at it to take away the pain, right? Sometimes your kid is going to get the short end of the stick, and you gossiping about someone else, or you talking badly about the school, or you throwing a big party to try to, construct social relationships, that's not going to fix some of the pain that we as humans experience. And in Western culture, we don't really like that, right? The American dream.
Right.
Work harder, do more, get more, and you'll solve everything. More Eastern philosophy says pain is a part of life. But when we refuse to accept that, that's when we suffer.
Mm-hmm.
So pain is a part of life. Pain plus refusing to accept the reality, that's when we suffer. That's when we feel like we're banging our head against a wall. That's when we're pandering to mean mom groups, trying desperately to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Trying desperately to say, I feel like you're not being kind to me. I feel like you're not being authentic. I feel like something's off. That's a little bit refusing to accept the reality of the group that you happen to be in.
Yes. And you said, oh God, that's like, I'm going to write that on my wall so I can remember it.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. And it's really interesting, the context that you just gave about sort of affluent Western communities in particular. Can you speak to that a little bit? Are you seeing this more? Of course you are, but in certain communities than in others? And if so, why?
So yeah, and I think it has been interesting on Instagram to get out of, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, but to see people from all, people in the middle of Arkansas saying, oh, I'm experiencing this. So, or people in India telling me this is huge in Indian culture, which the sort of hierarchies, which would make sense with some of the caste system. So, but it's all over. But I do see it much more in the affluent communities. There's more competition, and there is actually, a degree of limited resources in terms of top tier college positions, right? There's only one valedictorian.
Yeah.
There's only one homecoming. There's only one internship at X, Y, or Z. And so there is, I think, in that culture, a lot more focus on being the top tier. And when you get to the top, there are only so many positions.
Right.
And that's that scarcity mentality where your win is my loss. If your kid gets the internship, mine doesn't.
Yeah.
What does that mean about my kid? What does that mean about me? What does that mean about my parenting? What does that mean about their future? Right. And then we spiral. So we're in this anxious generation, anxious culture. And I do think with affluence also comes an ability to think that you can control your outcome maybe more than you can. Like if you look at the college scandals,
Oh my God. Perfect
It's
example.
a perfect example of like what I'm talking about.
And it's wild too, to be a parent and to move from communities. Like we are all existing where we are. And then that becomes your whole world to an extent, which is human nature. And you think, okay, this is just the way it is. But I found it very striking when I am, let's say, at a playground with my two kids. I have a boy and a girl in rural Ohio versus Hollywood, Los Angeles, California.
Yep.
Those are two sort of like very straightforward American examples. But even that, I'm like, wow, the way parents act toward one another, the way parents act toward children who are not their own children, and either judge or say, oh God, they're all kids. You know, I have a bunch of those. Man, oh man, is it different?
I've seen the difference very much in public versus private school. No shame to private. No shame to private. I've got 3 kids. I've got private and public school experiences. So I have seen the difference very markedly between the two.
Of course, for the same exact reasons that you described.
Yeah. And so I think there is something, and again, this is not to say that relational aggression doesn't happen in every community. It absolutely does. But it's also tied up in some of the, the pressure to succeed, right? That's, Jennifer Wallace's book about never enough, which is
I don't know Jennifer Wallace's
fabulous book, Never Enough.
In the show notes.
Talks about like teens and she's a mom in New York City. She's a journalist. And she's talking about sort of this epidemic where the mental health epidemic in kids and teenagers, where they're really it is never enough. And so I think that culture of never enough, it's never enough. Like you have to be the top, but there aren't that many spots. And like, what can I do to help you get there? And I like to think that most of these mean girl moms, it's coming from not an evil place. It's either coming from their own history, their fears in current society. Now, that's an explanation, but not an excuse.
Yes.
We don't have time. I don't have time to go around and, diagnose and conceptualize everybody I'm sitting at dinner with, right?
A lot of adults are unhealed inner children walking around in adult costumes and like, I love you. I send you blessings. And it is not my job to heal you. Like you need to do that for yourself because I got to do it for myself and the people in my inner circle. So like,
exactly.
I can't be that for everybody because I try to have so much empathy. And I definitely have had girlfriends that I confide in give me like an Irish slap and be like, Brooke, enough. This person's just being terrible. Like, let's
move on. Yes.
Go into the acceptance. So I guess I could talk to you forever, but what I want to ask is some final thoughts on creating authentic connections and on creating change when we are experiencing this mean girl, I move it past mean girl, but just relational aggression. So what are 3 things that people listening can remember moving forward, trying to navigate these waters?
So I'm always talking about name it. So first step, name it to tame it. When we live in silence and we live in sort of observing but not speaking, whether that's speaking outwardly to a trusted friend or inwardly to ourselves, we have to name it to ourselves and we have to start naming it to safe others. So first step to me is to name it when you're in a situation or a group that doesn't have you feeling comfortable. And I'm not talking about you go and meet people and one time you feel uncomfortable or the second time. I'm talking about when you're immersed in a group, you've known these people and something feels not good to you. Do yourself a favor and name it for yourself. Allow yourself to say, this doesn't feel good to me. And that's okay. And then name it to other people. Here's what I'm experiencing. Again, safe others. You have to be careful here.
Right. So safe
others, maybe
trusted friends,
a childhood friend, a family member you're close with, right? That would be the first thing, is name it to tame it. Second thing I would say is start teaching your children young about how to resolve interpersonal complications. So help them name it. So I know you're upset that Susie didn't sit with you at lunch today. let's talk about how you can address this with Susie. Let's talk about what you felt like. So teaching conflict resolution and emotional understanding instead of burying things with your children is really helpful. And the third thing I would say is think about, and since I can only give three, but I'm going to limit it at this. The third thing I would say is doing those low lifts. For example, coming up with a handful of less risky things you can do to stop the cycle when you see it. So if you're at a dinner table and people are gossiping, you can go to the bathroom. If you're too anxious to say, hey, everybody stop, right? But what's something small you can do for yourself to interrupt the cycle? You can get up and go to the bathroom. Nice. You can say, I don't really feel comfortable right now. If someone's excluded, you might say, I don't think that's really nice. Maybe risky. You're not telling them what to do, but you might say, I feel like that's not the right thing to do. So think about low-level ways that you can disrupt the cycle when you see it happening, and making sure you're not, by being quiet, continuing to perpetuate the cycle. So one is name it to tame it. Name it for yourself. Share it with trusted others. Two is help your children name it and recognize it and teach them different ways of resolving conflict versus a silent treatment or gossip or excluding people. And three is find for yourself some low lift ways that you can disrupt the cycle.
Beautiful. And those feel very approachable. I love those suggestions because they're, not a heavy lift, not
exactly
scary.
Right. You can leave that to me on Instagram.
It's like there's so many posts of yours that I'm like, I just want to send this to everybody. Why does everybody not know? I mean, like they do. Like You're just blowing up. So I thank you so much
for having me. This was amazing.
The work that you do, you are changing lives, and you are a safe space when people don't feel safe elsewhere. So thank you for naming it.
I hope so. And so find me on Instagram. I'm doing I'm trying to write like a digital guide for Mean Girl Moms.
Amazing.
Little survival. I call it the survival guide. It's just, going to explain some of this and give you some comebacks to use in these particular situations so that you can have it handy.
That is so useful because when I don't know about everybody else, but when my nervous system goes there, I'm pretty good with words. Again, I'm an actress, but like the script goes out of my mind and I don't know what to say. So it's really helpful to have that guide where you're like, I have scripts, I have things that I can go to that I can say, my God, I can't wait for that. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for bringing awareness to this. Thank you.
You've been listening to Say More with Brooke Lyons. For more unfiltered conversations, head over to Substack. And if this one sparked something, send it to a friend. Thanks for listening.